Need for Speed ProStreet is not good. Those aren't my words, they're the words of former EA CEO John Catello, said as part of the promotion of Need for Speed Undercover. That's one hell of a sales pitch, John. This is the same guy who suggested that EA should charge Battlefield players $1 to reload in online matches, and more recently, he said that game developers who don't bake monetization into the creative process are, quote, fucking idiots. By the way, he's now the current CEO of Unity Technologies, so if you're still foolish enough to be optimistic about the future of the games industry, it's time to let that go. Moral of the story, John Catello is a moron, and if you think like him, you're a moron too, so if you don't love Need for Speed ProStreet, it's nothing short of a minor miracle that you've managed to avoid walking onto a busy highway or forgetting how to breathe. This is my third favorite racing game of all time, behind only Burger King's Pocket Bike Racer and Viva Pinata Party Animals, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about the game that pissed everyone off by not having cops, but in a stunning twist, it turns out everyone has a much better time without them around. My script says ad-lib social commentary. I don't know what that means. Anyway, this is Need for Speed ProStreet. ProStreet was developed by EA Black Box, the same developer that previously made the Most Wanted duology and the Underground duology, as well as Hot Pursuit 2. Interestingly, Black Box would later develop the Skate series, and that feels right, doesn't it? Most Wanted and Skate were developed by the same company. Anyway, Black Box decided, for whatever reason, that they were going to mess with a good thing and take the series in a totally different direction. To be clear, I'm happy with the direction they took it. I think ProStreet is a great game, but it's simultaneously true that I think that this was a stupid decision. ProStreet turned out well despite the new direction, not because of it. That new direction is, of course, the move away from street racing and towards a more organized racing ecosystem. It's technically still street racing. I mean, the races are still done on streets, but the streets are closed off and inaccessible to traffic. Alongside the move towards legal racing was a move towards becoming a more realistic racing game. This meant a greater emphasis on car performance and on player skill. ProStreet is still an arcade racer, but it's more or less the closest a game can be to simulation racing without being a simulation racer. You have to worry about tuning your car for specific types of events, about effective braking and taking effective lines and apex points and all of that other nerd shit. Most importantly, you have to worry about the condition of your car, so no more using walls and buildings to cover up the fact that you can't figure out how to turn. ProStreet features the first named protagonist in the series, Ryan Cooper. Ryan is a former illegal street racer making an attempt at dominating the legal scene. Side note, there is a theory that Ryan is also the protagonist of the Most Wanted duology and sometimes the Underground duology. This theory is fun, but has basically no evidentiary backing, so as far as I'm concerned, it's actually canonical. Ryan Cooper was the protagonist of 5 straight Need for Speed games. Now, the Need for Speed series is a pretty frequent user of the taste of power trope. In many games, you'll start out with an endgame level of power only to lose it after the tutorial. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, I like the use of this trope, even if it is a little predictable in the Need for Speed series. The reason I'm talking about it is that Need for Speed ProStreet doesn't do this. There's no dope-ass M3 segment to intimate you with the game and inflate your ego. You start this one out like the trash that you are. From the very start, it's obvious how much this game differs from the rest of the series to this point. The cars don't move the same way that they used to. They're weighty and slow to respond. You have to effectively use your brakes before taking corners, and identifying efficient lines is more important now than it ever has been. It's not Need for Speed, and it's not simulation racing. It's somewhere in between, and it's awesome. The biggest change, or at least the most immediately apparent one, is the introduction of car damage. Unlike in previous entries where car damage was purely aesthetic, damage now affects the performance of your car. As the level of damage increases, your car becomes less stable, less powerful, and harder to handle. Reach a high enough level of damage and the car becomes totaled, ending your race. Now, after this first race ends, we get the game's first cutscene.
Okay, the guy won, but he did not look pretty behind the wheel.
Hey, spoiler alert, this Rio guy is going to be exhaustingly insufferable for the entire fucking game.
It physically pained me to watch that guy drive, you know what I'm saying? I don't know how he made it.
Well, thanks for helping us out, Rio. It's been real. Oh, folks, Cooper has crushed today. The dude just totally dominated. Oh, yeah, Cooper's coming up. I'm saying. Well, now that was super dramatic. Come on, dude. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Cooper, you're going to Battle Machine, homie. You made it. Come on, you guys. Make some noise for him.
Up next is an animation indicating the Battle Machine is unlocked. I love the animations in this game, and really all of the 2D assets. I don't know how to articulate it, but the art style used for the sprites and UI are just perfect. They feel like the correct art for a game about organized street racing. I don't know. Anyway. Battle Machine is a racing organization, one of 8 in the game. The organizations host events in which racers can compete, aiming to do well enough across multiple races to win the race day. Your best performance in each race will earn you a certain number of points, with a win being earned after reaching an established threshold. Winning a race day lets you pick a mystery marker, earning cash, car repairs, or part upgrades. For the extra ambitious, a race day can be dominated by reaching a second point threshold, allowing the player to select another mystery marker. Different racing organizations utilize different stylistic elements, and may or may not specialize in certain kinds of races. Battle Machine has no race specialty, and their aesthetic was inspired by that one guy from your hometown who joined the Marines, never made it past boot camp, and now buys jewels for high school girls. The warp bigs are kinda cool though. The first event is a special type of event called a challenge weekend. During a challenge weekend, the host organization provides vehicles to all participants, leveling the playing field. Challenge weekends can't be won, only dominated, meaning the barrier to advancing is much higher. Completing the weekend grants a much larger reward than a normal event, usually letting the player select one of the cars with which they competed. The first event is Challenge Nevada, letting the player race through the Mojave Desert. This isn't the first video I've made about a game that takes place in the Mojave Desert, but you didn't watch the last one, so you wouldn't know. For future reference, you have my permission to watch my other videos. Your car options here are a Golf GTI, a Cobalt SS, and a Civic, and there are 4 races to compete in: a grip race, a time attack, and 2 quarter-mile drags. Grip races are races in a classical sense. All racers start at the same time, and the first driver to complete a certain number of laps is the winner. Time attack races are a variant of grip races, with staggered starts, and the driver who posts the fastest lap time declared the winner. Drag races are short sprints that require well-tuned cars and precise shift timing. Mechanically, these are very similar to the drag races from Need for Speed Most Wanted, except they now start with a tire heating phase to improve grip. It's a little gimmicky, but it does add some variety. Dominate the event and select either a Cobalt SS or a Civic as your reward. I picked the Cobalt. At this point, you get your first taste of the game's customization, and it's honestly really good. Aesthetic customization isn't any different from the system present in Need for Speed Carbon, but the customization of body and performance parts receives a huge upgrade. ProStreet didn't introduce auto-sculpting, that was Carbon, but ProStreet did introduce significance to auto-sculpting. Much like in real life, your car's body pieces affect aerodynamics, meaning you now need to consider top speed and stability when shaping your vehicle. Not that I give a shit, I'm setting every slider to 100% no matter what. Like with auto-sculpting, the performance part system is an upgraded version of the system from Carbon. Carbon allowed some light tuning of a few facets of each part, but ProStreet takes it to the next level, letting you get into the weeds with gear ratios and tire pressure. I don't know what any of these settings do, but I regularly tinker with them. There's also a wind tunnel and a dyno test, which provides some data about your car's performance, which is neat. The great idea but terrible execution award goes to the blueprint system. Essentially, blueprints let you create multiple configurations for each car, letting you quickly select the tuning that you feel is appropriate for each race day. Sounds great, doesn't work. Here's the problem. You're not going to create multiple setups because you simply don't need to. The game isn't hard enough for that, so this feature is totally flaccid. It actually would be useful if you could have blueprints for multiple types of races for each car, but you can't because fuck you, that's why. Oh, have I not talked about car types yet? You assign a race type to each car, which allows that car to be used in that type of race and only that type of race. If you want to use a car in grip races for some events and drag races in others, you're going to have to manually upgrade and tune your car every single time, in the snow, uphill, both ways. You even lose your aesthetic customization. Like, what the fuck? Ultimately, your goal is to defeat Ryo Watanabe. That guy sucks ass. You want to claim the title of Showdown King, not so much because you want it, but because you want him to not have it. And in order to get your shot at him, you have to dominate all 3 Showdown events. Showdown events are special events that gatekeep each tier of gameplay. Showdowns are unlocked by winning and dominating a certain number of events from the previous tier. I'm a big fan of this system because it establishes requirements without enforcing how you complete them. I mean, it's a racing game, so to some extent every option is the same, but the illusion of choice is a very powerful thing. You now have the choice of moving on to either Willow Springs or the Chicago Airfield. Each of these events start a track of events that get progressively more difficult, with rewards increasing as you advance along a track. At the end of the upper track is Challenge Texas, for which the prize is a Golf GTI, so obviously that's the track that I take. At your next event, you'll encounter a new type of race. I used type earlier to refer to how a race is broadly classified, i.e. grip races and time attack races are both grip type races, but I'm actually going to call those race classes from now on. From here on out, race types will refer to a specific style of race, so grip and time attack are 2 different race types contained by the grip class. Race type and race class are totally different. This should prevent any and all confusion moving forward. The next type of race in the grip class is the grip class type race. Grip class races are virtually identical to grip races, except they involve 2 races occurring simultaneously on the same track. Each class has 4 racers, with the low performance A class starting before the high performance B class. Strategically, there are some slight differences between grip races and grip class races. Specifically, if you are aggressive in being the first B-class driver to pass the A-class drivers, you can build a huge lead if the other B-class drivers get held up by the A-class. Similarly, if you lead as the A-class driver and can defend against B-class drivers trying to pass you, you can use the B-class as a buffer to separate you from the other A-class drivers. If you're into useless exposition, you're gonna love the next cutscene.
For the next 10 minutes and 10 minutes only, the lovely Sophia is gonna be posing with 4 very famous cars. A gang of dudes out there recognize them, cause I know you done been whipped by them. That's right, we got the 4 cars belonging to the Kings. Yo, the Kings are straight up legends at what they do. Come on, check them out. And of course you can check out Sophia too. Holla, girl.
See, in addition to Ryo Watanabe, the Showdown King, there are 4 other kings, 1 for each race class: Grip King, Drag King, Drift King, and Speed King. In order to challenge any of these 4, you have to break the track record in 10 races from their respective race class, and then complete 3 race class specific events. To challenge the Drift King, for example, you need to break 10 drift records and then complete 3 events that are composed exclusively of drift races. Defeating a king will also earn you the king's car, but by the time you're able to defeat any of them, your car will likely have higher performance than theirs. The next type of race that you're likely to come across is another grip race, the sector shootout. In a sector shootout, the track is divided into sectors, and points are earned by setting the fastest sector times. Owning the fastest time in all of the sectors earns a point bonus, so it's important to control at least 1 sector after the first lap, blocking anyone else from earning the points. Fortunately, the staggered start does mean that you can gauge how well you're doing during the first lap by how far you are from the next driver. At this point, I started to encounter the continue screen bug. On the PC version, the game sometimes freezes on the post-race screen as soon as you hit the continue button. It's infuriating, but fortunately you can usually restart your game and rerun the race and it'll work fine. Nothing game-breaking, but definitely a mark against this game. Around this point is also where you'll start to encounter half-mile drag races. They're virtually identical to the quarter-mile drags, except obviously they're twice as long. It doesn't sound like a big difference, but for cars that aren't sufficiently stable, it's often the difference between winning the race and totaling your car. Dominate 2 race days and win 2 more to unlock the first Showdown event, Showdown Chicago.
Together for the Apex finale.
like I said previously, completing Showdown events unlocks the next tier of race days. Much like challenge weekends, showdowns can't be won, only dominated, so you'll likely need to complete all of the events to move on, earning this cutscene.
Well, J-Mac, that was just totally whatever. Dude, this Cooper guy should just stick with the street racing, you know? Go home, man. All right, Rio. He's earned that. Let him hear about it. Make some noise out there.
Okay, look, I pretty extensively criticized the stupid things the characters from the last two games have said. I own that, that's me. In fact, I would love to keep doing that, but I don't know if I have the energy to engage with something of so little substance. Like, think about it from the perspective of someone working on the game, and ask yourself how the dialogue came to be like this. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a single lazier part of any AAA video game I have ever played than the writing in this game. And on some level, I get it. This game doesn't really have a story because it doesn't really need one, but fuck, man. Not having a story doesn't mean a carte blanche pass to be a terrible fucking writer. Go to school or something, Jesus. Shortly after starting on the next tier of race days, you'll encounter the next race class, speed races. Speed races are extremely similar to grip races, except the cars go much, much faster. There are two types of speed races, speed challenges and top speed runs. Speed challenges are just like standard grip races, except instead of having laps, they'll run from one location to another. In previous Need for Speed titles, grip races were called circuits and speed challenges were called sprints. Top speed runs are identical to speed trap races from the previous games. While I have no problem with wasting your time, I do not have much interest in wasting my own, so here's how I explained speed trap races in my video about Need for Speed Carbon. Sprints and circuits are familiar to all racing fans, so I won't explain them, but speed traps are unique. Because I am extraordinarily lazy, I'm going to defer to myself from my last video for an explanation. Speed trap races aren't won by the first racer across the line, but by the racer with the highest score at the end of the race. Points are earned by passing through designated speed trap locations at a high speed. Speed races are the hardest part of the game. Here's a brief compilation to demonstrate what I'm talking about. This is also where you'll start to encounter drift class events. Drifting earns points, with broader angles and higher speeds being worth more. Drifter with the highest score after 3 heats wins. Because of how different drift events are from the other event classes, having a higher performance vehicle isn't much of an advantage, if any. I honestly don't think I upgraded my 240SX a single time over the course of the game. Drift events were present in the Underground games as well as Carbon, but the weightier physics in this one make the drift events feel fundamentally different from the previous versions. Regardless, like with previous games, drift races are a highlight. I could honestly go for a game that is just exclusively drifting, that would be fine. No races, no story, no menus, no cars, no anything, just drift. The last type of event in the game is the wheelie competition. These are drag race variants for which the goal isn't to post the fastest time, the goal is to post the longest wheelie. Very cool idea, but it's too easy to build a car that can hold a wheelie for the entire length of the track, meaning wheelie competitions end up being little more than free points. Outside of that, I do really like the way that the difficulty scales in this game. The previous 2 games were trivially easy up until the final act, as long as you continued to buy upgrades as you unlocked them. In ProStreet, all of the upgrades are unlocked from the start, and it's on you to earn the money necessary to purchase them. I don't understand why exactly, but this system clearly allowed the developers to more tightly match the game's difficulty curve to player skill. As a matter of personal opinion, I find the state of constant but not insurmountable challenge to be way more engaging. What I don't find engaging is the continue screen bug that I mentioned earlier. See, at this point, I'm basically at the end of the game, and I ended up stuck behind it. I played the race over, and over, and over, and every time I saw the same result. But I am a generous God who gives the people what they want, so I was committed to finishing this video. In order to do that, I had to buy an Xbox 360. The savvy among you may remember that in the Carbon video, I decisively stated that I would not be buying an Xbox 360, but I don't like to tell the truth. Get used to it. With my soon-to-be vintage console, I started the game over, also that I could have footage to use while I talk about the end of the game for the next minute. Like I said before, there are 5 kings to take on, 1 for each race class, as well as Showdown King Ryo Watanabe. These kings represent the final act of the game, so to speak, though technically you can start to challenge them fairly early on. Again, repeating myself, breaking 10 track records in any race class will unlock the sequence for that class's king, and at the end of the sequence, you take the king on by racing them head-to-head in each race type from that class. Disappointingly, all 5 of these kings, Rio included, are pretty easily handled, and even more disappointingly, the cars that you win as rewards are all unremarkable performance-wise. I don't know, I don't have much else to say about the kings, Rio included, but that feels like an anticlimactic way to end the video. You want like a 30-second montage or something? Here, I'll give you a 30-second montage. Defeating each of them has a short cutscene associated, but for the race class kings, these cutscenes are just celebrations, so I'm not going to show them. Here's the cutscene for defeating Rio.
The mighty have fallen. Come on, you gotta make some noise, people. Ryan Cooper has come all the way from winning late-night street races to becoming our new Showdown King. Oh, yeah. And Rio Watanabe has given up his crown and his car, folks. Ryan Cooper has won it all. Ryan Cooper has become the new Showdown King.
Anyway, that's it. That's the whole game. There's not a lot more for me to talk about because, like I said earlier, this game doesn't really have a story because, again, like I said earlier, it doesn't really need one. Unironically, this is my favorite racing game. The Most Wanted duology kicks ass, don't get me wrong, but ProStreet just hits different. Per usual, big ups for tuning in. I'd really like my non-Need for Speed videos to perform better. I wish someone would watch them. It took me 3 months to go from 0 subscribers to 80, and then it took me 3 more to go from 80 to 8,000. And that kind of does my head in sometimes. I don't know, maybe I'm just humble bragging or whatever, but I'm saying that I think I must be doing something right, but I have absolutely no idea what that thing is. So if you have thoughts on the matter, please sound off in the comments. It would be a huge help. Same goes for what I'm doing wrong, honestly. I love to hear what I'm doing wrong. Some of the insults that you guys come up with, which I love, I really do. I endorse that. I want you to continue. When I was first starting out, I told myself that I would start a Patreon if I ever got to 10,000 subscribers. And now that I'm starting to knock on that door, it feels way too premature, but I am going to hold myself to that. Regardless of whether or not you would be a patron, let me know what kind of content you would like to see there if you were a patron. You know what I mean? Having said that, I am totally prepared to look like a jackass when this video totally flops and I don't end up any closer to 10K. You can find me on Twitter as well as on Twitch. I'll drop links in the description. I'd like to start streaming a few times a month. No specific games or genres in mind, just whatever I feel like playing at the time. Feel free to drop in and insult my intelligence sometime. Anyway, thanks for watching.